President Biden is dealing with some major setbacks in his legislative agenda, big ones. While the House passed a voting rights bill yesterday that combines the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Amendment Act, it is unlikely to pass a Senate vote due to lack of Republican support. Democratic Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are also refusing to change the Senate's filibuster rules. President Biden expressed his frustration yesterday.
It's about election subversion, not just whether or not people get to vote. Who counts the vote? That's what this is about. That's what makes this so different than anything else we've ever done.
So Nancy Cordes is joining us now from the White House with more on this. President sounded pretty upset there. I mean, not, it actually sounded like genuine emotion coming from him there. So he met with Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema at the White House. I take it did not go as he had hoped?
Right. I mean, we didn't get many details from the White House about that hour and change meeting that he had here last night with Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. But afterwards, we were told that they haven't changed their positions, which is no big surprise because for weeks now, they've had basically the entire Democratic Party leaning on them, arguing that this is of tantamount importance to the party, to their base, to voting rights more broadly, and to their prospects in the November midterm elections, and yet they are not budging. And they are arguing that if you change the Senate rules to weaken the filibuster, sure, it will help Democrats pass voting rights legislation, but then what happens if Republicans take control of the Senate and they can pass whatever they want with only 51 votes? So that's their position. Democrats, on the other hand, argue, OK, but if we don't pass voting rights legislation, Republicans are sure to take back control of the Senate because Republican legislatures across the country have been changing voting laws in order to make it more difficult, Democrats believe, for minority voters in particular to vote. So that is the standoff, and Manchin and Sinema are under a great deal of pressure, but that is a situation that they're quite familiar with at this point. This is not the first presidential initiative that they have blocked, and they seem to be quite comfortable sticking where they are.
We know that President Biden also met with the Senate Democratic Caucus yesterday. Do we know how that meeting went and what they spoke about?
Sure. He was still making the same case that Democrats need to all stick together to not only pass voting rights, but to change the filibuster rules, which, keep in mind, is not a position he has always held. Last year, he was arguing much along the lines of what Manchin and Sinema are saying now, which is that it would really cause a breakdown in what little cooperation there is left in the Senate. It was well received by 48 of the 50 Democrats in the Democratic caucus, but clearly not by the two who he is trying to convince. Now, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is still planning to hold a vote on voting rights legislation, this big bill that would really overhaul voting in this country, making it the law in all 50 states that you have to allow mail-in voting, you have to allow early voting, restoring parts of the Voting Rights Act that had been struck down recently by the Supreme Court. But he's probably no longer going to hold that vote before Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday, which was his initial hope. There have been some COVID cases that are going to prevent him from being able to do that in the Senate. But he says he's still going to hold that vote because he wants to up the pressure on Manchin and Sinema, get them on the record and showing them that Republicans are all going to vote against this. So the only way for Democrats to pass it is to change the rules.
They already know that. And they're not convinced. So right. I'm wondering what the strategy is moving forward. What we've seen with some of the other portions of the president's agenda, like maybe, police reform, is that it just sort of, other things have just gotten shelved or pushed aside. I don't know if they're waiting for the temperature to go down or there are more pressing things to discuss. But is there a path forward for this voting rights agenda?
Look, the problem with this initiative and so many others is that there is a 60-vote threshold to move to bills for a final vote in the Senate. So even if the president has all 50 Democrats and the vice president on board to pass it. And that goes not just for voting rights, but for police reform and climate legislation and gun control legislation and so many other pieces of his agenda. Even if his party were in lockstep, it doesn't mean anything if Republicans can filibuster those votes and require a 60-vote threshold. That's, that has been the case for time immemorial in the Senate. And so, it's not as if he is crowding out other legislation that is important to him and is at the top of his agenda by having this voting rights fight, because he can't pass those bills either. And, the big central item on his agenda, the Build Back Better bill that has already passed the House, that he had hoped to pass in the Senate months ago, well, you've got the same problem there, which is that you've got those two Democratic holdouts, two moderates, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, who are not big on that bill either. They might get on board if there were major changes to the bill that brought the price tag way down. But then, of course, you run the risk of turning off progressives who really like the size and scope of that social spending bill. And so that's another challenge that continues to be worked on behind the scenes. But that bill's not ready for a vote right now either.
Wow. Nancy Cordes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.